KTAR.com. Special feature. Every week, we introduce you to a new personality, somebody that you do know or somebody that you don't know that you should know, always with a fascinating story. Pat's personal portrait. Today, it's Rich Dozer. You don't mind if I call you Rich. I know that formally it's Richard Dozer, right?
I'm Rich.
Rich Dozer, Gen Spring. What does that mean?
Gen Spring, Generation Spring, it's a wealth management company.
Okay. You are a giant at Gen Spring, one of the grand poobahs, as you were with the Suns, as you were with the Diamondbacks. 1995, the furor that was going on in this community about anybody having the gall, even if that anybody was Jerry Colangelo, the gall to talk about a baseball stadium at a Major League Baseball park. You remember those days?
Remember those days very well.
Why the passions, though? Why, now nobody would even imagine that anybody would ever not want the Diamondbacks.
And in 2001, when we won the World Series, you couldn't find one person that would say, oh, I was against it. I was all for it.
But why were the people against it when they were against it?
Because they were getting taxed without their vote, they thought.
You say they thought.
Well, they were getting taxed without their vote. It was a very short tax. It was paid a lot by people that didn't live in this community because all the winter tourists paid it too. But it was a tax that was in and sunsetted before we played our first game.
An awful lot of folks, though, and you were a major executive at that time with the Diamondbacks, the very beginning of the Diamondbacks. And you had a period of time then, of course, obviously, with the growing pains of a baseball team, new to Major League Baseball. Do you remember how many games you won that first year?
It was somewhere around 60-something.
Yeah, not terribly exciting. And then came 2001.
But every game that first year was sold out. Every game, and we set a record with the most attendance.
Well, and everybody was excited about having a Major League Baseball team and all of those other teams coming in and all of those superstars coming in. But 2001 was our year, and you remember that vividly. How did that start? How did that year begin?
Well, the year began before it began when we assembled all the players a couple of years before with the Randy Johnsons and the Todd Stottlemeyers and the Kurt Schillings and all the different players. It really began the building blocks before that, acquiring all the team, all the talent. And we didn't start great that year. We were not in first place the whole first 2 months of the season. We really started to come into our own in the middle of the season.
And then you wound up, unthinkably, in the World Series. The newest team to ever achieve that, right?
Fastest team in the history of Major League Baseball to win the World Series, which is 4 years.
So there we were, not just in a World Series. We weren't playing the Cleveland Indians, and we weren't playing the Anaheim Angels. We were playing those guys. It was like a B-movie script. These new kids on the block playing the New York Yankees.
Also playing the New York Yankees 2 months after September 2001. I mean, you're right, it was a movie script.
So you and the management, Jerry Colangelo, your official title at that time was?
I was the president of the team.
And you said, we're playing the New York Yankees, and everybody had to be tremendously excited. Did you really honestly believe that you had a chance?
We really did, because we had one thing that is proven to do well in World Series: two phenomenal starting pitchers. If you have two great starting pitchers, you've got a chance to win 4 games because they're going to pitch twice each. And you win 4 games, guess what? You win the World Series.
And then Game 7 came along, and there it was, all tied up. I'm talking about 3-3. New York Yankees had looked very, very good in New York. And they came in here, heavy favorites, to beat us, even at home. And Game 7, you have one specific memory that nobody else has. Those of us that were in the stands, biggest fans in the world, you were sitting there with Jerry Colangelo. Remind us what was happening at that moment. The 9th inning.
Okay, let's just go back to the bottom of the 8th. Rivera comes in, and he's big in the news this week because he tore his anterior cruciate ligament.
Remind everybody, though, there's not a big baseball fan who
Mariano Rivera is the best closer in Major League Baseball, in the history of Major League Baseball. The most saves, he is the very best closer.
So in the 8th inning,
he comes in the 8th inning to pitch the 8th inning for what was called a 2-inning save, which he does in big games.
Yankees were ahead.
Yankees are ahead 2-1, and he strikes out the side in the bottom of the 8th inning. Strikes out 3 batters in the bottom of the 8th inning. And now we're coming up in the bottom of the 9th inning. And everybody's standing on their feet. The white pom-poms are shaking. Everybody's cheering. Jerry and I stand up, we look at each other, and he goes, with a smile on his face, we don't have a chance, do we? And I said, no, we don't have a chance, because Rivera has got this thing called a cut fastball, and it comes into a left-handed hitter and away from a right-handed hitter. And our first hitter is one of my dearest friends, Mark Grace, who's a left-handed hitter. And Rivera is impossible to hit if you're left-handed because it breaks right in on your bat, hits you right above your hands, and saws the bat off in your hand. He's got no chance. I said, Grace, he's got no chance. We got one out before we can say boo. And he goes, I know, no chance. Well, Gracie tells me later, he goes, I was going to get on first base if I had to put my head in front of the ball and get hit in the head. Well, Gracie hits a line drive to center field, and it was a line drive compared to Gonzo's to win it. But he hits a nice little soft line drive into center field, and all of a sudden we jump up and looks at me. Jerry looks at me and goes, we got a chance. And we had a chance. And then some interesting things happened. Because if you remembered, you have to go back the whole first years of that franchise. We had the roof, and it was new, and we had weather. And so I had a weather guy in town who was my guy, who I'd call all the time, tell me what the weather's going to be like at first pitch. In the fourth inning, what do you think it's going to be? Sean McLaughlin, friend of yours, friend of mine. And so the day of that game, it was sort of ominous. You remember cloudy and drizzly, and I talked to Sean an hour before the game, and he says, it's not going to rain. It's going to look bad. It's not going to rain. And he was doing a party outside of the ballpark on Jackson Street during the game. And all of a sudden, it looks like it's going to rain. I call him, and he goes, Rich, I got the radar right here. It's not going to rain. Call him back a few minutes later. He goes, I'm telling you it's not going to rain. I said, Sean, it's raining inside the ballpark. And he goes, I'm a block away. It's not raining here. Well, that was a very interesting part of the game because the field got a little wet. The commissioner sent somebody over, wanted to talk to me. I went over and talked to him. He goes, close the roof right now. I said, Commissioner, we can't do that. He goes, I'm the boss. Why can't we do that? I said, because you have to play the same number of innings with the roof closed as open. Let's close it at the end of the inning if the weather still looks bad. And he goes, okay, close it at the end of the inning. I said, no, I'm going to come over and we'll talk about it again. If the rain stops, let's leave it open. He goes, well, at the end of the seventh inning or so, I went over to him and it stopped raining. I said, I think we leave it open. He goes, okay, let's leave it open. Well, the field got just wet enough that the next batter up, Jay Bell, lays the bunt down. Rivera, who's known as a great pitcher but also a great fielder as a pitcher, came in to pick the ball up. Picked it up. It was wet because it was on the ground, and he threw it away into center field. And the rest is history. Because Womack gets a big hit, Gonzalez wins the game, and we win the game. But the field was wet, and that was sort of ominous.
And if Paul Harvey were alive today, he could only close that with Game 7, 2001, the World Series, Chase Field, and that's the rest of the story. On Pat's Personal Portraits, KTAR.com.